Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Oh, are you feeling as sleepy as I am? I know for some of you it's probably in the middle of the day, and other of you are only just waking up, while some of you are already heading to bed. But I hope you all, we're starting with a bonk this morning. Really, such violence. I forget that your sleepy voice is lower than usual. You get spooked. I'm actually the gene replacement. Oh, the headpad didn't. Oh, I see. It looks like the headpad got activated a minute ago before the thing began. That's why. It went through. It just only, you have to wait until I'm on the screen before you can see it. It is what it is, though. It is what it is. I hope you're all doing okay, though. Early today after missing 2 streams. Oh, well, I'm glad to see you, stars. I'm feeling very, very, very tired. I woke up this morning, and I think I had a nightmare or something, because my brain started off in like a really highly agitated state, but I'm doing better now. Now, you know what we're gonna do? Let me go through all of the lovely people here. I'm going to read off the congratulations to the first 3, and then say good morning to everybody else. You ready? First off, congratulations Spooky Cows on first, Tasha on second, and MC Bumble on third. I'm very, very impressed that you all kept it in the right order this time. And now for the rest. Good morning, MC Bumble. Good morning, Spooky Kaz and Lunar. Good morning, Tasha and Ocean. Good morning, Galactic and Nelia and Kai. Morning, Butter and Tally and Sleepy Rose. Good morning, Brooke and Echo and Amelia. Good morning, Sunny the Sunshine and Humina. There we go. Good morning, Az and Sleepy Sunny Puppy. Good morning, Poison and Marine. Good morning, Shadow and Destiny and Syndra. Good morning, Lila. Julia and Chicken. Oh, it's okay, Poison. Good morning, Silver Cats and Ghostly Nightlight and Elite. Good morning, Pan and My Chemical and Little Mouse. Good morning, Amy and Mia. Good morning, Shadowy Destroyer and Selenia. Good morning, Bellatrix, Ella, And da Oh, well, I'm sorry you fell from your bed. Hopefully you can fall back into the bed. So we're gonna be very chill today and play a little Minecraft. It'll be a lot of fun. Just build some things, run around. Oh, what's wrong, Sleepy Rose? What didn't send? Good morning, Claudia. Thank you so much for the follow. Good morning, Sleepy. Now, go take a little nap. Go lay your head down. You can leave my stream on in the background. But even a nap is important, okay? No reason to stay up. I'll be here for at least 2 hours. Morning, Claudia. I think all my mods are sleeping too, though, which is kind of funny, so hopefully we won't need them today. We will be bringing in some new mods this week, by the way. So get ready to see them and say hello. Oh, there's Karamea. Should make staying up late a hobby. That's not a good hobby to have. Good morning, Era. How you doing? Welcome to the menagerie. Don't worry, I'm eating a little food right now. You might see my mouth move every once in a while, but I may not say anything. And that is because I am snacking. And I have water right now. I have my little sparkling water that I make with my soda stream, which is absolutely lovely. What am I eating? I might be eating cold ramen. I just don't really have any breakfast food around right now. I think I forget sometimes that breakfast food is a thing, especially when I, do some grocery shopping, and then I'm like stuck with a bunch of like meal food. Food is food, exactly. Hello, Jocelyn. I hope you enjoy your time here. Well, it's cold because I made it cold. I only really had a minute to think of something to eat, and I was like, well, here we go. Ramen. I have ramen I can eat, and that'll work. But don't worry, I'll wrap myself up in a blanket just to keep warm to balance it out a little bit. Good morning, Moo Moo. You still up? Shouldn't you be asleep by now? Alright, let's see how convenient things are going to be today. There it is. Ooh, very convenient. Look at me. Oh, sleepy. It's because of, in the morning. Keeper said to call me a puppy and make me bark. No, sometimes I deactivate some of the ones for the morning. Just either what I'm more in the mood to do, or, things that I am, can't do too well when I'm tired. Good morning, Dan the Malkin, and ZZ is tired. How you doing? 11 as in 11 a.m. or p.m. I hope you're not waking up in the middle of the night. It's fair. It's fair enough. Don't worry, they'll be back. What am I building today is a very, very good question. I don't know. We might work on the subscriber cave a little bit longer. Just do some resource gathering. I know. Oh, that's right. I was going to build out this. I'm going to slowly make the starting house that we've made so far into a tower. Like a wizard's tower. I was trying to figure out the layout for it, and it means that I'm going to break a lot of things. I was getting bored of looking at the outside of this place. But, might be a little while before we get to that. For now, though, I'll probably just go clear out the sub cave a little bit more. Yeah. Ooh, I am very, very out of it still. Alright. You don't have to call me out like that. I am not eating homemade ramen. I am eating instant ramen. I know it's more of a snack. Don't you worry, though. After stream, I'll make some rice porridge. And that'll hold me over for a while. That's fair. You have to have a want to play it. There we go. Yes, I've been defrosting chicken all night so I can make myself a big container of rice porridge. That's what I pretty much all I've been eating lately, actually, because it's a warm meal that you can pick up anytime. Very tasty. And so I'll just, grab that a lot. What am I? Oh, the pickaxe. How did you fail making How did you fail making grilled cheese? What happened? Did it not grill your cheese? I need to know. Good morning, Nana. Ooh. Nana Nam Nam. Good morning. That name caught me off guard. I was having difficulty understanding it for a little bit there. Should I just repair the one we have currently? Yeah, I'll just repair this. That'll do. Does anyone put tomato clove? Tomato clove? What is a clove of tomato? That doesn't sound like a thing. Am I crazy? I mean, yes, but besides that, what is a tomato clove? You failed and burnt yourself. Oh, well, enjoy your studying, Lila. I believe in you. Be good. Rice porridge is so easy. I definitely do suggest trying it sometime, though, if you've never had it before. Oh, tomato slice. That'd have been so funny. Clove of tomato, like it's a garlic. So remember, the secret for having good grilled cheese is usually a lower heat, as well as putting a lid on it so that it will melt the cheese better, not just burn the bread. And then the real secret for grilled cheese is mayo, instead of using butter or oil on the outside. There you go, that's what happened. Heat too high. Makes sense. A lot of Americans don't have kettles. If we need to boil water, we'll use pots. I have a kettle, but not a lot do. Oh no. Oh no, not the microwave tea. Not the microwave tea. Yeah, you're about to get attacked. Oh, so you don't put it in the grilled cheese sandwich. So what you do is you cover the outside of the grilled cheese sandwich with mayo, and you fry it, and it makes a very, very crispy, crunchy grilled cheese. So sorry. Well, I mean, if you're making pasta in the kettle, there's something going on. Water tastes horrible when microwaved. Sorry, we're okay. Does microwave tea taste any different? I mean, I don't microwave my water, so I wouldn't know, but I don't think I've ever tried it and really recognized the difference. The taste of radiation. Oh, you got this, Z. You can get up. I believe in you. Oh, for Crucy. Da-da-da. Risk making yourself sick? What do you mean risk making yourself? I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. I'm not saying you should. I prefer just using a kettle, but I'm pretty sure a microwave's gonna kill off any bacteria. You don't clean your microwave? I think I'm enjoying just watching this conversation happen over the absolute outrage over microwave tea. It's one of my favorite things to see. Meanwhile, here I am sitting with my cold ramen bowl, definitely not an energy drink. Speaking of, we're just gonna mute real quick so I can totally not open this. Hey, Dea, I don't think you understand. Most Americans don't have a kettle. It's not a thing you could ask a parent for or a family member for. Most Americans don't have a kettle because tea and those kind of beverages are not so prevalent as a primary thing for us to have them. A kettle is usually an additional thing that people get, more of a luxury than it is a necessary item. Now, plenty of Americans do have an electric kettle, but it's significantly rarer here. And I think it's so funny, exactly, that so many people from, like, Europe just can't comprehend that. Kill stars, the electric kettle doesn't do that. You just hear clicking noise. And see, microwave is fine, yeah. That is a common misconception with it giving you actually any radiation, but the kind of radiation a microwave uses, microwaves, is not anything that could cause you any actual harm. Not like that. We do have toasters. Toasters are very common. Or toaster ovens, depending on the person. Microwave. Just add hot water meals. Most of those meals in the States don't say just add hot water. They'll say put it in the microwave for us. Or you throw them into a pot of boiling water. Thank you for the follow, Foxy Roxy. I mean, if you have never had one, you don't ever think about it. And I think there's so many people out there who don't ever need to use a kettle. Well, don't put metal in a microwave. That works. Coffee makers are a little bit more common than kettles. Actually, yeah, I'd say coffee makers are a lot more common than kettles. Especially now that you have Keurigs and stuff like that. That was terrifying. That's fair. No, yeah, if you can actually microwave a normal egg. Name a random expression. You should definitely play Animal Crossing. Confused. The only way I won't eat eggs is I don't like boiled eggs. There's something about the smell and the separation between, especially I'll eat maybe a soft boiled egg in a very rare occurrence. But a hard boiled egg I will never eat. I'm good, Cruzy. Not big on deviled eggs either. I don't like the hard white. I like poached eggs a lot. Poached eggs are great. Sunny side up are okay. I love poached eggs. Yeah, poached egg. You take an egg, you crack it, and you drop it in like a pot of water. But you can usually add like seasoning to the water. It creates this lovely little creamy, floaty egg. And you can put it over like ramen. Oop, well, that was almost the worst mistake of my life there. Good to know. Good to know. Be a little bit more careful. My heart just stopped. Good night, Spell. Night. Sleep well. Well, get yourself some food. Make sure you lay on the proper side of your stomach, the left, I think it's the left side or the right side, to help yourself. I love eggs in a nest. Thank you for the... Oh, a raid. Hello, raiders. One sec. Good morning, good morning, good morning, raiders. How are we doing today? I hope you've been having a lovely, lovely morning. What were you up to? Carmia, would you be able to do me a little favor and do a shout out for me? Give me 1 second while I take you all down to another room that I have. Hello, lovely, lovely raiders. This is the basement. And you see, I had an idea a while back. I wanted to figure out how I could get closer and closer and closer to getting partnership numbers right. And I had an idea one day. So I had this lovely little basement built that I could do this. You're trapped here now. I hope you enjoy your time here. How are you doing? How was stream? I hope it was lovely. Yes, the cage. You know, it's surprising. Majora's Mask randomizer. Ooh, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I love that game. You know, let me give you a little follow real quick so I can come by and watch you play it. I'm really tempted just to hop over there right now and watch it on stream, but it might be a little bit too energetic for this early in the morning. But hi, my name's LuckyJene. I'm a gambler, a writer, and a soon-to-be villain. And you live here now. I'll go watch the VOD later. I've been wondering, how does that even work? Oh, if you need to raid and run, feel free to do so. I don't want to force you to stay, but how do those randomizers work? Is that some kind of mod you use, or? Always wanted to try it. It's all about theories. I'm gonna go insane. What do you mean? Wait. I feel like I missed something. What are we talking about? Theories? Shadow Prism, thank you so much for the sub. What should you eat? I can tell you what you shouldn't eat. Do not eat cold ramen in the morning. Oh. Good luck, Vestige. I believe in you. Egg, bacon, toast. That's what you eat for breakfast. Eggs, bacon, and toast. I want buttered bread so badly right now. But I have no butter. And I don't even have milk, so I can't make butter either. Hey, Buttertub, where you at? Come here, let me rub you on my bread. I thought I fell again. Love your buttered bread. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, I'll have to look into that. Yes, definitely. I need to go grocery shopping. I don't. I just don't have anything for breakfast. I have like an entire Thanksgiving meal I'm waiting to make for Thursday. Don't forget that we will be watching the Thanksgiving Day Parade. Oh, and you know, I just was gifted a gift card, wasn't I? I guess I could add that to my... I could buy some stuff. And that's like it's free food. Yeah. I'm excited. Okay, cool. Sorry, Buttertub, I'm gonna have to rub you on my bread. You're just gonna have to live with being rubbed on bread. It's okay. Free food is the best food. Man, I miss back when I was in college, because back in college they used to do this thing where you would have a meal plan, right? And they'd give you an insane amount of meals because they knew you'd never use them all. And they had this cafeteria that had like all you can eat food. All sorts of different kinds of food. And thank you for the bays, Crucy. I so miss having a place that you could just go and pick up hot food. And just, you know, sit down and eat. I ate way too much, but still. Nice. And you make a funnel and put it on that so I can just lazy dump things in there. That sounds good, Stars. I hope you enjoy that. Don't spit on my bread. if you are feeling like you have heartburn, I would suggest drinking lots of water to dilute your stomach acid and taking charcoal tablets if you have any. If you don't have charcoal tablets, Pepto-Bismol or a bismuth-based liquid will also help with heartburn. What do you mean your college cafeteria exploded? How does that happen? Yeah, no, going straight into working life. Valid. Honestly, a lot of college wasn't worth it. Just put me in a lot more debt. One of the Evans, that would make sense, yeah. Some bias busted. Oh, I feel you. I need more experience points. Let's go check out the monster grinder and see if it's working. I feel like there might be too much empty space around the monster grinder. And that's why it's not working as effectively as it could be. Where'd I put it? Okay, there's the one part of it, but that's to get into it. Is that it? There it is. Don't boilers have water in them, though? It's the worst that'll happen. One second. Bumble, that makes sense. That does make sense. I'll give it to you. I'll give you that. Doesn't sound the best. I mean, I'm sure it's fine. Oh. Yeah, if it comes to, like, if you're worried about college debt, you should go to, like, a local, like, a city college. Because what I found out is jobs only care about having a degree. They don't really care where it's from. As long as you can do what you say you can do. Unless you're working in one of those unique academia-based fields. Well, I mean, worrying about the fire ain't gonna stop it, is it? I'm sure it's fine. Thank you for the follow, Ethereal Ranch. Are you a ranch as in a place where Been waiting for you. What kind of ranch are you? Are you the thing that you put on salads? Or are you the one where you put animals there? You're gonna lick soup off the. Why are you licking soup off the table? Sorry, I was enjoying my food. That's why I got quiet. You were 3. Well, that wasn't good soup. It does, because you move the acid away from the esophagus. I think it's the esophagus. And while I wait for these monsters to come down, I think I might take out. I can't alt-tab. I was going to alt-tab to look at the mod applications. But you'll do that later. Italian wedding soup. Oh, that's very good, actually. A witty undertone. Yeah, I'm worried that you could get a witty undertone from the table. I should just idle here and then come back after work and take a look. Has it been 45 minutes? Really? Oh. Oh, it has been. Just like the hotel. That's fair. I mean, I'm always looking for more mods. I'm not saying I would pick you, but I'm saying that there's no reason not to apply. You know? Where are they? Thank you for the headband, Silver. How are you doing? Yeah. Morning, Pink. I want to make my rice porridge. I wish I had a microphone I could just grab that was as good quality as my current one. Then I could go cook up my rice porridge while just chilling with y'all here. While we wait for these monsters to come down. I think I'm gonna have to rebuild this somehow. Probably do the above the ground version instead. Log from video rice porridge. What are we gonna do? Watch the... Honestly, it doesn't take me a lot to make it. The only thing that's gonna be a little bit, time consuming is just cutting up the chicken. Yes, congee. I make it a lot. Because it is very filling. Makes high amount of food. But, it's also simple. My main thing is I like to eat a lot of food. Try turning down my render distance. Oh, that makes sense. Vestige, you should definitely be getting some sleep. you staying up so late? Mm. Overstudying can be very bad for you. So be careful, okay? If you study too much, you're not going to retain anything. Actually, you know what? We want the experience, so we'll go cookies up the normal way. Oh, you get some sleep. Thank you for coming by, and thank you so much for the raid. I do really appreciate it. I'm sorry you have to get up for work. Oh, my knees hurt. I'm too cold. Okay, 1 second while I grab a blanket. We have a blanket now. Also, so you need to have an updraft of heat and a downdraft of cold for a tornado. So you need to make sure the heat is rising if you want to make a mini tornado in your bedroom. Big brain. I know that won't work either, but just saying. If you want to try it again, you should, make sure the wind's going in the right direction. Did I not have a diamond sword? Why don't I have a diamond sword? What's wrong with me? I should have a diamond sword. Wow. Because God me, we need to have mini tornado. Cause cool. Cause I'm so cool that I need to have a mini tornado. That way I can keep a tornado as a pet in my house. Tornado pet. I'll enchant you later. There are my diamond shoes that I need to enchant. Yes. Exactly. Imagine getting out of all activities the rest of your life because of mini tornadoes. You know what we need? I just need to find a monster spawner somewhere. Oh. I set that on fire, like, so long ago. I'm surprised it's still on fire. You can have a blanket. I have 3 on my bed right now. Feel free to grab one. Just make sure you grab a good one. Yes. It's Dogman. Dogman. Well, I use one to put on me, and another one to put on me, and another one I use to cover me. Sometimes I use one as a pillow. Other times I use one as like a body pillow. And other times I make a little nest and walk around in a little circle in my bed, and then make a little huffy noise and lay down as if I was some sort of large dog. I mean, I never do a little circle on my bed, make a little huffing noise, and then lay down. That's not me. I've never done that once in my life. That was somebody else. Hashtag imposter syndrome or imposters. I like making blanket nests, except no, I've never done that before. Which new flavor? There's a new flavor. Hello, dog. I'm taking you with me. Come here. You're my best friend now. We're having tacos later. I should get a cat. Hello, dog. You coming with me? We're having tacos later. On the moonlight. If you've never made yourself a blanket nest, or like a pillow nest, or even like a warm laundry nest, you should. Actually, that's one of my favorite ones to do. I feel like I am too, like, animal coded sometimes. Because I have before, like, taken all the warm laundry, put it on my bed, and then just, like, laid on it and fell asleep in warm laundry. Hello, dog. You. Adventures await. Well, you don't want to come with me, that's okay. I know a girl who has a human-sized dog bed that she, like, unironically sleeps on as her only bed. And, like, she's a dog girl VTuber as well. Pubby, Pubea. Thank you so much for the follow, Sophie. She's like a Tom girl girlfriend ASMR VTuber. She's one of the people who actually gave me a lot of advice starting off because I was wondering how she does her lighting and stuff. And she uses Shoost to do all the lighting like I do. Which is what my cage is done in, is Shoost. And the way she does her stuff is so cool, so yeah. It's comfy, I'll sleep here there. You should. Definitely get yourself a little dog bed then. They're not too expensive actually either. I've thought about buying one a few times because I think it'd just be nice. Is it Sophie? Thank you for the headpats. Sophie-ish. What is... Oh, that's just an Enderman. He was so short. Enjoy your studying. Can cat girls have dog beds? Of course. Just call it a pet bed. Human-sized pet bed. I like this cave. Hello, cave. You're my favorite cave now. We're getting soft tacos later. I just really would, I would go hard on some tacos right now. Because I do have flour and oil. I couldn't make soft taco shells. That's so much work. And I'm so very, very lazy. Dogs, get them. I'm not gonna be making rice porridge, but you know. It is bad to fall asleep with a knife. May I suggest not doing that? It's bad for you, because you might end up stabbed by you. I'll read some poetry. If I had my life to live over, I'd pick more daisies. What's the name of this poetry book? Let's see if I can find a nice one. The Woven Wall. I have stolen a strand of the spun gold you wear, so lightly at your heart, and with my tight weaving, constructed a wall between me and my doomed days. I am safe. I can break my alliance with death and read theology in a children's book. Forget my tales of alienation. I'm engaged in the erotic act of looking at myself spiel the Bible pages off verse by verse. Vietnam. I don't want to read Vietnam. I don't want to do this one right now. We'll do a different one. All right. Oh, here we go. Byron, you ready? My soul is dark. Oh, quickly string the harp I yet can brook to hear, and let thy gentle fingers fling its melting murmurs o'er my ear. If in this heart a hope be dear, that sound shall charm it forth again. If in these eyes that lurk a tear, 'twill flow and cease to burn my brain. But bid the strain by wild and deep, not let thy notes of joy be first. I tell thee, minstrel, I must weep, or else this heavy heart will burst. For it hath been my sorrow nursed, and ached in sleepless silence long, and now 'tis doomed to know the worst, and break at once or yield to song. So we'll go no more a roving so late into the night, though the heart be still as loving and the moon be still as bright. For the sword outwears its sheath, and the soul wears out the breast, and the heart must pause to breathe, and love itself shall rest. Though the night was made for loving, and the day returns too soon, it will go no more a roving the light of the moon. There we go. Byron, Lord Byron. I might go through Lord Byron's book, actually. At some point. I like Lord Byron a lot. A very good poet. More people need to write poetry. Read Dr. Seuss, bet. Redfish, bluefish. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. That's all I remember. I don't want to eat green eggs and ham. I don't want them on a boat or eaten with a goat. I should have brought some. I forgot to grab a bed. Now here I see. The one I have partially memorized is Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I ponder weak and weary over many quaint and curious volumes of forgotten lore, while I nod suddenly there came a rapping, as of someone gently tapping on my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." "Do not die in the cave. You cannot prevent me." What'd you say, Nia? Oh, got it. Gotcha. Sure. Sayora. Saura. Also known as Sword Art Online Abridged. Well, are they doing dispatch though, or are they doing ASMR? Hello, Nia. How you doing? Morning, Pinky. Hi, am I? I'm doing good, actually. How are you? Go get some sleep butter. Butter tub of butter. Butter tub of butter. Butter tub of butter. Good, glad to hear. Do you want to fight me, IRL? Let's go. I'll come visit you in that fake country of yours. Oh yes, Nia, I said are they playing dispatch or are they doing ASMR? Oh, okay, yeah, we'll raid into it. Because I know they would be upset if I was to raid into them while they're doing a game. Are my dogs trying to kill themselves? Would I win a dance battle? No. Let's be honest. No. Your dogs, I have meat for you. I would love to win a dance battle, but I most definitely would not. Do not have the skills unless you were to ask me to do, like, swing dancing. You lost your house key. That's no good. Would you win in Scrabble? Depends on who I'm playing against. An elementary schooler, most definitely. Carmia? Probably not. Oh, thank you for the sub. Thank you, Virus. Thank you so much for the sub. Really do appreciate it. I don't know why I came up with that idea. Don't forget though, y'all, the mod applications are still open. They'll only close when I finally decide to look at them. Yeah, but my spelling skills are so badly bad. Did you ever hear about that guy who doesn't speak French, but he won a French Scrabble competition? And he won it by memorizing the French dictionary because he wanted to play the Scrabble game. He doesn't actually know French, but he memorized all of the words that he could in the dictionary. You're borderline dyslexic? Is that a thing? I looked at the man, I'm like, that man's autistic. You can tell right away. Get him, dog. sweetie. Where are we? I know, Gummy. I read it the first time. You don't have to remind me, hon. But we have no wood, do we? Oh, did I heal the baby? Yeah, the baby looks fine. Baby, come here. You with your giant freaking head. Stop moving. I'm not gonna die in the cave. I will be fine. I'll be fine. You don't gotta worry. Stop. Fine, I'm no longer calling you hon. Carmia exclusively is no longer allowed to be called hon. That's all. Hi, Welshie. What woke you up immediately? The explosion? That's fair. Oh, hearing hun. Oh, honey. Thank you so much for the follow. Greatly appreciated as always. Welcome to the menagerie. I hope you enjoy your time here. And thank you for the sub, Sad Cat, and the follow. Welcome to the menagerie. I do appreciate it. What other games do I play? Everything. Mostly in the evening. Minecraft's just my morning game right now, but we might start doing a Slime Rancher. I'll need to try out Slime Rancher soon, though, to see if it works. As long as you don't commit arson here, you can commit arson wherever you want. But no arson here. Murder. Fine, we'll go down just a little bit, but we won't go down too far. Nia, I am not ignoring you. Why do you think I'm ignoring you? I've talked to you. You said that Saura is doing ASMR gaming. Have you said anything else since you said Saura is doing ASMR gaming? Because if you have, I haven't seen it. Did you say Saura is doing ASMR gaming? Yeah, no, I'm not going further than that. I'll wait till daytime. Oh, if I called a wolf Nia, I did a long time ago. And that world ended. I did. Well, I didn't see that one. I would never ignore you. But unless you do the highlight message, I can't guarantee I will see it. But no, the Nia died. I can't name it Nia again. That'd be a disservice to the first Nia. Oh, well, yeah. Most definitely butter. Oh no, I'm gonna name it Core. I'm gonna call it Core. I'm gonna call it Boar. Bornia. mean, probably. Hey, dogs, do you want to kill the thing? No? Well, I guess I'll take care of this. Gene is bullying you. I have never once bullied you in my entire life, you nerd. Yeah, and all people being bullied. Take me out. Beat them up. Are you alive, dog? Good job, dog. Proud of you. Hello, I farted in class. Did you fart in class? And all bullied victims. Interesting. I mean, apparently they're proud of it. They named themselves in the memory of the incident. Yay, Iron. I do not bully people. What are you talking about? I tease and occasionally torment and occasionally devour, but very rarely. Look at that stupid spider. Bullying is usually done with malicious intent and can be seen as more severe by some people. And it depends on people's definition. All those things that really only matters when you're in school. Because some people are like, oh, well, you're bullying people, so you're being malicious to others? Or, oh, you're teasing, you're just goofing around. Just definition of words. That's not bullying, that is being practical. Don't be made out of butter if you don't want to be rubbed on bread. No, Carmius, I made it only one chat so you wouldn't have a lot to clear. Just seems more malicious. Now when I go into Discord later, and I go to every one of the categories, send an individual worded message that you have to read in order, that's when it's bullying. It's a secret message, and if you decode it, you get $20. But if you don't decode it right, you owe me $20. Because I do that. Let's see what I'm thinking. Hey, we have a new village that we're going to live in. You don't get a bed anymore. Butter bread, bread with the butter. Butter bread, bread with the butter. You look so stupid. Ready for a car ride? Yeah, let's go on a car ride. I'll go on a car ride. When was the last time you just went in a car and drove without any purpose or plan? A while since I've done it. I'd like to go drive the mountains. Good morning, Angry Stego. Welcome, you adorable dinosaur. Welcome to the menagerie. Hang my head out the window. I can't hang my head out the window and drive at the same time. Because God did not bless me with this skill. But I'll do it anyways. What's the worst that can happen? Where are all the chests? Oh wait, have I robbed this place before? Yeah, I need to stop robbing places. Okay, but I'm not Jim Carrey. There's only so much I can do. I don't remember where I commit crimes. I'm sorry I can never be Jim Carrey. I hope you'll be able to forgive me for that. Right, Sarah? Oh, she's so great. What do void things look like? Ooh, it's a secret. I can't show you yet. We'll work. Is that gold? What's that? We're working on design once we get it established. Morning, Amdis. Good morning, Blitz. But by the time I get partnered, we'll have a whole design sheet out for him. I know you do. What is this? Oh, wait, whoa, look at that, Oh, that's so cool. I love when things generate like this. I'm gonna waste this pickaxe, it's gonna be fun. Yes. Blitz how 18 to the power of 18. Hello, Haru. Oh, I should be able to find a thing here. Oh, I need wood anyways. Okay, let's do this. Right. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Not me forgetting I had a bundle. There we go. Good night, Momo. Sleep well, sweetie. How am I doing? Pretty good. You call me Jane. Less good. I was doing great, and now I'm only doing okay. Been demoted. There we go. I don't know anybody named Bubbles, though. Good morning, Monstrous. Monstrous. I heard your name is Stress and then Mon. But now it's Monstrous. Good morning, Monstrous. Welcome to the menagerie. Double shield. They'll never stop me now. Do you find stars? Sorry, Monstrusa. Monstrusa. That better? Did I take? Yeah, I took a spat at it. Enjoy making your breakfast. Instagram, that's a rare one. This is the morning stream. If you like more energy, I do promise I do some more energetic streams. Oh, we'll take these. Yes, oxygen is nice, and vitamin D is also nice. Vitamin D's. You want the nerd voice? You and your love of the nerd voice. Too bad I'm getting rid of it forever. What is that emote, Moo? Oh, Moo, get some eeps. Are you finally laying down? Should I end stream now? What was that noise? My stream is depressing, apparently. Okay, I got you. I'm gonna take what you said out of context and use it to make myself upset. But egg energy. What is egg energy? The energy of an egg? A thing? Ooh, name tag. Oh, bubbles. I have a plan. Dog, you almost got me killed. I am no longer traveling with dogs. You all live in this mine from now on. Well, they're dead. I didn't want to be mean to the doggos. I did not intentionally kill them. The dog... What is with all the creepers today? Forgot the word intuitive. That wasn't very intuitive of you. Alright. Good night, Momo. Close your eyes. I need a sword. How much rails do I have? She wanted to come over here mostly just for the rails. There we go. Thank you for the legs. I want a dog on my feet. Chat, which one of you is a dog? Come lay on my feet. Would I take a cat on my feet? Sure, that works. Dogs blow up around me. Dogs only blow up when they try to kill me. Oh, good morning, monsters. I'm good, no worries. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alright, I see we got that southern voice there. Oh, moo moo. Now, dear, sweet darling. Get yourself some lovely sleeps, alright? Relax a little bit. Will I take a bunny? Am I just acquiring animals now? You're so goofy, ain't you? Lovely little southern voice for the next 2 minutes. Maybe longer if I forget to stop doing it. Which happens more often than I'd like to admit. Serious, how cold you are? I got this. I'm gonna warm you up real quick. There you go. I'm like a battle bag when it tries to touch me, give him rabies. I'll get yourself some sleep. Good night. Bunny. Little bouncing bunny. Oh. Imagine. That's alright, Wolfie. Close your eyes. Lay back. Relax. Get a leaps. You ain't gotta be awake, right? Why would you possibly want to stay awake? Just relax. Good morning, Opal. Well, good evening. Depending on what time it is for you. Oh, heck, y'all, I gotta check on something real quick. Y'all don't move. You know, I forgot. I'm technically on call right now. So if I do randomly drop off from stream, understand it's because work called me, alright? I don't want to randomly disconnect from the stream, but I may need to at some point. I know work is so needy, but it keeps paying my bills, which I forgot to put in my time card last week. I should probably do that. Are we friends? Of course we are, Nia. Of course we are, Nia. What's up, Gibbets? I know, real, ain't it? Good morning, Gojo. How you doing? No one better call. Yeah, that's fair. Alright. What do I use for my time card again? Oh, I've forgotten how I normally put in my time card. Few. That's what it is. Oh. Show me your teeth. There's my teeth for you. Why'd you say you wouldn't come to a morning stream? Ain't your thing? Alright, here we go. 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. Perfect. Submit. Timesheet submitted. Yay, that means I'll get paid. Now, where were we? What if I do a slightly longer stream this morning? A dentist just became part of my community. I sure hope so. Hello, lovely dentist. Come fix my teeth for me, won't you? Oh, well, show me your teeth. That's fair. That's very understandable. I appreciate you being honest. Respectfully. Alright, where we going? So sucks about the dogs, but you know. Sound like a Texas cowboy. In a bad way or in a good way? Somebody did redeem Southern, so I'm gonna be stuck in this accent for a little while. Hey, Cinder. You need to work out for your health, don't you? Work out every day. Much as you can. Don't you be making any excuses. I have found myself in a bit of a predicament. You see, on the one hand, my legs are not covered in blanket, right? But on the other hand, my arms are now exposed to the cold. And so half my body is dealing with having a lovely, lovely temperature while the other ones, the other part of me is not happy. How do I fix this? How do I fix this? Hoodie. I ain't got a hoodie. 2 blankets. You cooking right there. You cooking. You might be onto something. Maybe I could even do 3 blankets. You know what, let me grab another blanket actually. Predicament. Blanket hoodie. Blanket hoodie. Man, I want one of those. Have you seen them, the hoodies? They look so nice. So nice. So big. So fluffy and warm. Y'all, I'll be right back. Give me a split second. I'm gonna grab myself another blanket. I'll get y'all out of these. Don't you worry about it, alright? I'll mute for just a second. I have returned. I hope you didn't miss me too much. Do I ever sleep? Of course I do. I sleep all the time. I sleep before my one stream and then I sleep. I'm gonna sleep now, actually. Good night, y'all. We're gonna go honk shoe. Eat. I believe in you, eggs. You can do this. Become a chicken. Oh. I just killed 2 eggs. Oh, we're gonna be doing a sleep stream, actually. So, starting on February 13th. So starting on February 13th, Friday the 13th, we'll be doing the start of our Donathon Subathon. And there will be sleeping on stream happening. Cooking stream will only be unlocked if we hit a certain level of the Donathon Subathon. There will also be a raffle to win a date with Gene, where you will do a little hour-long date with Gene on stream. And a few other things like art, as well as the Patreon ASMR drops. But again, we gotta hit a certain level of, we gotta hit a certain tier of it. What's the thought? Oh, I most definitely have talked in my sleep before. I also most definitely occasionally snore. And the goal is all to raise money for the 3D and 2D models, as well as, potentially fund some new projects. And there's even a tier that if we achieve it, which I don't think we will mean that I'll quit my job on the spot and just full-time stream from that point on. How you get that goal? What? Honey, sweetie, go to bed. Close your eyes, stop tapping. You're supposed to be trying to sleep. I also hope I hit that goal. That'd be amazing. Imagine I don't even know what I would do. I mean, I guess I'd quit my job on the spot like I said I would, but still. Crazy to think about. Am I actually Texan? I am not, no. Just what the Southern I like to do is Texan. I mean, I can also do this one. Let's see if I can move it up a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. We got this Southern as well. All you gotta do is ask me a few things and I can tell you a little bit of anything. Why would I be Texan out of anything? I mean, really? You think I could be that? No, darling, I ain't Texan, not even a tiny bit. I ain't never even visited Texas before, though it's on my list of places. Streaming is fun. Practice, though. Make sure you practice streaming. I see. Did I put the. Wait. I see a lot of people who want to start streaming that just don't put the effort in to learn the streaming skills. Remember, it is more important to learn how to be good at improv and learn how to be able to sit in a room with absolute silence, still make it entertaining, than it is to post to like TikTok. The skill of streaming is more important. It takes time to learn. I might end up moving to Texas, actually. For one reason only. Do you know why I'd move to Texas? Because that's where Funimation is right now. So I could get voice acting. That is one of the best places to live right now to get anime voice acting. Because everything is bigger. Yeah, just like my sense of entitlement. Oh, my exes live in Texas. Maybe I should stop dating Texas people. Oh, good morning. Guten Morgen. Wie geht's es Ihnen? Alles gut? Hast du gut geschlafen? If you're gonna go visit America, I would pick like some of the really cool places, but remember, we don't have trains and places are really far apart. So make sure you either take planes to places you want to go, or be ready just for a very long drive. Come to gamble. Well, that's gonna be 100 biddies. Hast du gut geschlafen? There we go. Oh well, Maria, how you doing? Yes. Just like make sure you plan it out well, because you could drive for 2 days inside of Texas and still be inside of Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, specifically Texas. Oh, I want deep slate. Dang it. Alright, here we go. Not practical, honestly. So the problem with trains in general is due to the amount of line you would have to lay at once. Like, I mean, we should have trains by now. But the problem, like, growing up throughout history was that we just did not have the resources to lay all of the track that we would need at once. And it was much easier just to put down roads, a lot cheaper. You needed less to manage, especially when cars were so easy to get. Alright, let's go get some deep sight. Yeah, we use mostly just freight. This is funny. I think I have fanfic on AO3, not ones I made. I think that is where Vanya uploaded the fanfic she wrote of me. You might find the Gene verse on AO3 with the foot cake and Big Macs on, or senpai. Yeah. Oh yeah. Because of my hatred of the Big Mac, Vanya wrote a fanfic where it's a high school romance style fanfic. If y'all not heard it, I've read it on stream a few times. Oh, the Big Mac is a very, very awful burger, and I hate that it is the, seen as the epitome of McDonald's burgers. I have an absolute hatred for Big Macs. They're just garbage burgers. Do it, write your universe stuff. I believe in you. I might even read it on stream. I do enjoy A&W burgers. Wendy's isn't bad. Sorry, I had a message. Oh, no, but it's just a bad burger. That's my lore with it. I hate it. So here we go. You ready? The Big Mac is an awful burger just due to what is on it. All beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, some sesame seed bun. But that's actually a lie because it's not just a sesame seed bun, is it? No, the sesame bun they split off into 3 pieces. So you take the one beef patty, put it on one side of the bread, the other beef patty, put it on the other side of the bread. You put double the amount of lettuce and other toppings and the extra amount of special sauce, which is really just Thousand Island dressing. And you act like it's something special, but in reality, you've just screwed up the proportions of the meat to bread ratios, and so, overall, it's just a badly, badly balanced burger. It is awful, and I hate it. If you're really to talk about a good McDonald's burger, just go with something like the McDouble, which is a lot more iconic. It's one of the first things they serve there to begin with. 2 burger patties, cheese, rehydrated onions, ketchup, mustard. Very simple, an ideal stylized kind of burger. But the Big Mac is just bad. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And my hatred only grows for it every day. If you have to get custom bread for your burger, maybe don't. I'm sorry, Ronan. I'm very sorry for you. Hopefully one day we can get rid of it together. How do I leave? Yes, I'm going a little bit longer today. How do I get out of here now, actually? Where is out? Wait. Here? I think it's here. No, I'm just going a little bit longer today. I think I've explained a few times to people here, but I know not everybody's been here. I work remote in the mornings, so sometimes if I know the day's not going to be too aggressive, or if I just feel like it, I go for like an extra little 15, 30 minutes. Thursdays and Fridays, though, I work from home completely, so those days I can take more time for. Alright. Please sort this for me. This too. It's not going to go much longer, probably about 5 more minutes actually. So I might just try to see if that looks good, if I want to do polished. I guess, ooh. We're gonna build all that up into a wizard tower soon. Okay. I was gonna compare you to you to you. Okay. Tile. Ooh, the tile's gonna be nice for the wizard tower. Yes. Alright, well, perfect. We have a plan then. I'm gonna make all of the wizard tower out of the tiled deep slate. Should be good. Alright, let's go see if the piss fish is still streaming. Coffee talk. Oh, that sounds fun. Let's see what it is. Yeah, perfect. Alright, lovelies, we're gonna go right into Saura. I appreciate you all coming by today. It's been a very lovely stream. Yeah, my computer behind me is definitely trying to get my attention, so, I'm gonna go do some work. Y'all be good. I'll see y'all next time. We're gonna do a little EP raid, okay? I'm gonna do a... Oh wow, it is going crazy back there. Okay. EP raid. Go say hi to my favorite jellyfish, alright? Copy that raid message. I'll give you about 10 seconds here. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Bye.